Lesson of the week. Today's lesson is going to be about plant anatomy. At the tail end, I'll show you how you can look at these things without using a microscope as well. It's a great time to go over plant anatomy because we have bud break happening right now. Today it's cold as heck and miserable, but you're going to see really rapid bud break happening this week if you go outside wearing a mask and socially distancing, of course. So we're going to start with stems, and then I'm going to go through leaves, roots, and meristems. So this is how my lilac looks right now. And I'll show you some more videos of that next week. So here's your basic stem. And these little buds here are also called nodes. The inner nodes are the spaces between the buds. The buds are actually growing out of last year's leaf scars. Leaf scars are where the leaves were attached last year. When they fall off, they leave a little mark, and that can become a future stem. So the terminal bud, terminal means end. This is the growth tip that does the primary growth. If you're a gardener, if you cut this off, those two will grow bigger, and that makes the plant grow fuller. This is one reason why gardeners often prune their shrubs. Axillary buds, axillary means sides. Terminal buds are on the end, and those are the inner nodes. So as a raging garden nerd, I love to shape a lot of my plants when I prune them. So here's an awesome trick. If I cut this plant right here at that mark, it's going to cause this node to grow upright, and I can change the direction the plant grows merely by how I prune it. Inside the stem is a really cool cross-section. The xylem flows from the roots up, the phloem flows from the roots down. We've already talked about the dicot and monocot difference. The awesome thing is you can even see it in a stem cross-section. A dicot has usually a ring pattern like this. A monocot looks like chocolate chip cookies with the xylem and phloem. And just so you know, the xylem is pulling from the roots up. Right now, the xylem is flowing very heavily in trees because it's increasing leaf growth. So the trees are drinking a lot of water or soaking up a lot of water and pumping it into their branches. This is the time of year, or towards the end of the year, for maple syrup harvesting season where I grew up. As long as it's below freezing at night, the maple sap is flowing really quickly, and it's a low sugar content, but it's all of the stored energy in the roots. And when they tap the trees, they end up boiling out about 90% of the water to produce maple syrup. The phloem flows from the leaves to everywhere else. So as the leaves make sugars, this is what brings it down. So just so you know, xylem flows up, phloem flows down. You can also see layers of growth. The cambium is the protective layer of growth, and it's also the widening part of the stem. If you were to pull off a piece of bark right now on a plant, you're pulling off the entire cambium. The cork is the outer protective layer that we kind of consider that. You don't want to do this because that would actually kill the plant if you pulled it all off. As a gardening nerd, though, you can slice off the cambium and attach a part of another one of the same species of plant, and that's called grafting. Moving into the leaves, there are so many things. The main part of the leaf is right there. The veins look like veins. The midrib is that thick center part as the leaves open up. And the petiole is the little leaf stem that attaches it to the branch. Just so you know, monocots don't have those. So the main parts you have to know for this class is you have to know blade, veins, midrib, and petiole. Don't worry about the other ones. If you were to slice open a leaf with a microscope, which we don't have access to, you would see these other layers. Here's the awesome thing. You don't actually have to know this for this class, but the leaf has some really cool features on the interior of the leaf. Going on to the roots, you have taproots and fibrous roots. Taproots look like a carrot, and these roots can go really deep. Fibrous roots go like a net. Your grassy lawns tend to have fibrous roots. Some trees have taproots, some have fibrous roots. Usually monocots have fibrous roots. Dicots can have either. And the root anatomy is also really cool. And meristem is the site of rapid growth. Meristems on branches, I'll show you in a video when it gets warmer outside. The primary roots are the biggest ones. The secondary roots are the tiny ones. Being a plant nerd my whole life, I used to love digging up wildflowers in the woods and trying to plant them in my parents' yard. They never grew because when you pull those plants out, you're pulling out these tiny little root hairs. And this is all microscopic. So these are really tiny little things. And these are the site of all the absorptions. So if you pull them out, pull the plant out by its roots, all of those root hairs are severed off. And that will kill the plant. When people garden, as you try transplanting plants, you know that when you're planting something, you usually should prune the top of it, because if you do damage to the roots, you need to reduce the amount of leaves so that the plant doesn't starve. So the meristem is the site of rapid cell growth. When you have seeds growing, if you look at the very tips of the roots, you can see massive mitosis if you have the right stains and a microscope, which we don't have. The weird thing about roots is they're really powerful. I mean, they're microscopic, and yes, this does look a little phallic. This root cap here protects the meristem. And if you think about how a plant grows, it's drilling through soil that is hard for us to dig through in some cases. These meristems can do such rapid mitosis, they can split rock apart. But the thing with roots is their main function is to absorb water and nutrients. They don't eat the soil, but they do absorb nutrients out of the soil. So here is where you have the root cap. The root cap protects the tip of the root, which is really delicate, and it's basically a helmet. Here's where you have massive areas of cell division. Here, the cells aren't dividing, they're growing bigger. As the roots get more developed, you have an area of differentiation. The only things you need to know for this class are root cap and meristem. Root cap and meristem. And meristems are the site of elongation. Here's a cross-section of a meristem of a plant growth shoot on a bud. If you sliced it open with a razor blade and looked at it under a microscope, here is the meristem of that. These are the sites of rapid cell division, and this is where all the plant growth is. And this is microscopic, but I'm going to show you how to recognize these parts in a Brussels sprout. And you can see the whole stem anatomy. There's the meristem. Here are the nodes, those little lumps. Here's the inner node between them. These are kind of the control center for a plant. So if you look outside at any plant, especially when they're first starting to grow, the top has what we call apical dominance. Apical dominance means it's kind of the biggest area of growth. If you were to cut it off, the rest of these nodes would all take over and make the plant fuller, which is one of the things we do when we shape plants. Cool thing is these things have tropism, meaning they're attracted to stuff. Root meristems grow toward gravity. Shoot meristems grow towards light. So this is going to be attracted to light. If you're trying to grow plants in your house right now, you might see them leaning towards your windows. The reason why is light stimulates the plant to cause more cell division on the dark side that makes the plant lean towards the light. And tropism is how a plant grows, toward or away from something. You are probably bored right now, so you can do this experiment with a shoebox if you want. You take a little cup, fill it with soil, and using an old shoebox, and just use a plastic cup for this, you can make a plant maze, and you just close it, and the plant will slowly crawl through the maze to find the light. This works best with something like a pinto bean or a black bean or a kidney bean, because they have a lot of things. And this is called phototropism. Plant stems grow towards the light. Gravitropism is plants respond to gravity as well. Roots naturally want to grow down towards the earth, which is a great adaptation, or they would die. Stems want to grow towards the light. Here you can see what happens when a mudslide tips the trees over, and then they responded to grow upright again. And meristems are the only parts of the plant that get longer. After 1 year, stems only grow wider if they're a woody tree. They don't get longer. An example of this is a lot of kids and a lot of adults think if you plant a birdhouse on a tree, it'll grow taller every year. The tree will grow taller, but that birdhouse will remain in the same spot. Because the only time that trees are growing taller is right now as buds break. So here's what bud break looks like. The meristems elongate rapidly. So here are all the buds on, I believe this is an apple tree. Here are buds on a chestnut tree. Right now, this is exactly how they're looking outside, and you'll see some of them opening. As they open with things like crab apples, they'll flower first, but if you look, the leaves behind them are growing rapidly, but the stems are growing longer. In the case of things like crab apples, their bud break will be about 12 inches of growth in the next few weeks. So this is the one time of the year that trees grow taller in Colorado. We've already done a little video on this, but it's good to see modified plant anatomy. Once the snow melts, I'll make a video showing you stolons on my strawberries. Modified stems, and these things are modified for storage or reproduction. When plants reproduce from their roots, it's asexual reproduction. They're just making copies of themselves. So here's some modified plant stems. We have the rhizome, and we have the stolon. The rhizomes were things that I showed you, like irises in those videos earlier, as well as in my kitchen cutting up the ginger. Here are above ground modified stems. Underground stems are called rhizomes. Above ground stems are called stolons. Last year I planted some strawberries in my yard, and they're spreading throughout the entire yard. And it's cool to watch because they do grow really quickly and spread really fast. Whoever bought our house is going to be unhappy with all the strawberries in our front lawn, though. So you see stolons on things like strawberries or spider plants. Rhizomes are seen in things like iris and grass. Tubers I showed you when I planted the potatoes, those are seen right here. Corms, I will dig up some corms to show you corms once the ground thaws later this week. Corms look really weird, but they're cool. And that little bud on there is making a new plant. So we've got stolon, rhizome, tuber, and corms. We have some really cool modified roots as well. You have storage roots, things like carrots, and are a great example, as are beets, which you see down here. These roots right here on this mahogany are called buttress roots. And just so you know, these can grow really tall. They can be like 6 feet high right there. Buttress roots are to stabilize things. This right here, these are adventitious roots growing on, I believe this is either corn or bamboo. Adventitious roots start off of a stem and drop down to hit the ground to help stabilize the tree. Here are some on a strangler fig. This is in Thailand. If you go through forest where strangler figs grow, you'll see like little threads hanging out of these fig trees. Once they hit the ground, they get stronger and thick, and it helps the tree spread. Other trees that grow this way include banyan trees. So adventitious roots start above ground and spread over large areas. Storage roots hold the food, and they're often called root tubers. And buttress roots just look really cool. You see these in the tropical rainforest because the soil is really poor quality and it's all clay. And with heavy rains, this helps stabilize these trees so they don't tip over in the clay. A tulip bulb, we already talked about in the video, those would be considered modified leaves. If you do a cross-section of an onion, you will see this leaf anatomy, which I showed you when I was cutting them up in my kitchen. So these are modified leaves serving as food storage. Those are the true roots down there. So I hope you learned a little bit about plant anatomy. If you're really bored, I'm going to show you some tricks to play with plant anatomy to entertain yourself at the tail end of this week. If you're interested in joining in the activity, find some sort of cup, some potting soil, a shoebox, and next time someone is ordering groceries or getting them, ask them to pick up some celery for you. Otherwise, just keep yourself safe, and I miss you all.